living a well life is put together, authentic.
We feel it.
Take care of ourselves.
Hello and welcome back to the Wishing You Well podcast. I'm Amy Albero.
And I'm Catherine Van Eyck.
We're both licensed therapists, and we spend our days learning from our clients about their experiences. And on Wishing You Well, we want to continue to learn from others. So we share and hear stories about how we all navigate our own journeys to well-being.
Today on Wishing You Well, we are hearing a very interesting story. We're hearing all about Amy's health. We start from a very pivotal moment in her life when she realized she had to make a change, or else she might not be here today. And she navigates us through how she turned it all around with a new perspective on what well-being means to her.
Forewarning for all of you, I definitely get very heated and passionate in this discussion, and I have some maybe hot takes to share with you. So just, buckle up to hear some candid conversation. Okay, so I know that I'm going to be doing a bulk of the talking today, so I want you to be the one to start us off with a self-care check-in. And you could, feel free to go a little more in depth about how you are and what you've been up to for self-care. Help share the mic with me today.
Share the love. Okay. If I need to be long-winded, I need to think a moment. Okay. One of my self-care things this week, I guess you asked, check in first. I'll check in first. I think recently, and it's kind of coming off of a couple of weeks ago, my husband and my second wedding anniversary, and we had this moment. Ooh, I'm almost sharing a little too much here, but we had this moment leading into our anniversary, and then at our little anniversary picnic that we had, that we haven't been paying attention to each other. And yes, okay, here and there, of course it's happening, but for the most part, our interactions all have been revolving around our daughter. And it makes total sense, obviously, since she's this new love in our life. But it and I think so much so that it hadn't occurred to me how much I miss him and I miss us. And as much as, and I think I actually talked about this pre-baby on Wishing You Well, a conversation that he and I had about what we were going to miss about our life, just the two of us. So even though we had that conversation and we tried to prepare, there's only so much preparing and only so much knowledge, even as a marriage and family therapist, that you can have to try to work on your relationship. I think so much of our relationship did just come so naturally, and it was so easy. Even just when we moved in together, every transition in our relationship, as chaotic and tough life could be, our relationship was so grounding and so consistent, and I could really rely on him and us to just be awesome. And so when we had this crazy life change, adding one more into our little group, making a group instead of a duo, we didn't know how to do that. And I think I just had so much faith in the fact that our relationship was so great that it would just be so great and just happen, and it didn't. So we both came to this realization, had this kind of oh shit moment, wow, I really miss you, and we haven't been spending enough quality time together, and really just being with each other and talking to each other and doing really fun things that we were so accustomed to being able to do so often. So after having that realization and talking about it, then it really brought me down a little bit because of that feeling like, oh wow, I thought that this would just happen so naturally and it didn't. And oh my God, I just like fell into a pit that so many of my clients fall in and have fallen in for like years and years, and like so hard to come out of when you're like not paying attention to each other and just everything's about the kids. And so like, then I was just really down about it. I was like, damn it, like I thought I had this in the bag. So once I came off of that and we like talked about it again and I felt like a little more solution oriented, I was feeling a little better. So he and I talked about having date nights, you know, similar to Amy and Chris date nights. Not as frequently, but we talked about like doing something just the two of us once a month. Like literally having babysitter, aka his mom, come over and and do, not really babysit, but you know, be there while our daughter's sleeping, and how so we can go out. And like that was something she suggested to us like months ago, and we just didn't do it. And what's actually even funny too is like the night that we did it on our anniversary, we came home like, I don't know, an hour and a half or 2 hours later. And she was like, you're home like really early. And we were like, we don't know what we're doing. So we need to get back into something, or not back into something, but like we need to work on it.
It's
We need to,
creating a
like,
new
put
something too in some way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so my self-care around that recently has really just been like enjoying my time with my husband when we do have the time, and really being intentional about that time together. So our daughter's like sleep kind of sucks still, and like she'll wake up after a couple of hours. So we don't even have a ton of alone time at night. Even if we are just going to like intentionally watch a show together and it be like our thing, or like not and like have dinner together or whatever it is. And so like that makes it hard because she's still like, she's still bothering us.
She's still so needy. Damn.
So needy, like be independent. So we're still trying to figure out like how to do it. Like the things that did come so easily and so naturally, and like the time that we used to just have together that isn't our time anymore. Trying to work that in somewhere. Still a work in progress, but like I'm feeling much more optimistic about it than I was when I initially had that shock of like, fucked it all up. We didn't do it right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the self-care is less self, but like it totally influences how I just feel as me. If I'm not having that time with him and cultivating that relationship that has been so well cared for so long.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you for sharing. I know you were, as you started to share, you were realizing that it was a vulnerable share. And I so appreciate that you shared that in particular, because I don't think it's something that is widely talked about. And as you said, like this is an area of like expertise you have. You've had, you know, how many couples sit in front of you and kind of like fall prey to this very thing. And so it goes to show that like just having the knowledge around it doesn't necessarily, you know, prevent it from happening. And it's so simple to happen.
Right.
Like it just so easily can fall off to the side. And understandably too. So it sounds like, I mean, it's to say only, I mean, it's under a year. It's been 9 months or so.
Right. Yeah.
Which is also wild. And it's still an adjustment period. And it sounds like while you are a little hard on yourself, you're giving yourself some grace and also like trying to figure out what it looks like for you now. And I think, you know, that's important too, because I think what you know, which might be harder for some other individuals who aren't like, who again, don't do this for a living, to realize is that like, it won't ever be the exact same, at least not until, you know, she and her, you know, potential future siblings are launched or whatever. And I think that's so tough, and redefining again, what your relationship is as husband and wife or as friends or whatever is now is going to be important, and just different.
Well, and I think not only has, or maybe it's like having our daughter just kind of flung us into a different level of adulthood that we hadn't been in before. Of course, the parenting, yeah, but like buying a house, like all of a sudden now we're like business associates in the way that we hadn't been. And like, so if we're not talking about a daughter, then we're talking about this house that we're buying and all the things that come along with that, along with the stress and money and like, just like the unsexiest things ever that has just been such a damper on all the rest of it.
Yes. And, well, and I think when like and I'm using air quotes if you're not watching us on YouTube, but like the general people, when they say like marriage or relationships are hard work, like I think this is what they're talking about, like, because it does take extra work and effort and intentionality to prioritize your relationship in the midst of everything else going on that can so easily grab your attention and focus and is also a priority. It's tough.
Yeah. And I think that like any other time, if there was like, because clearly like buying a house isn't the first like serious thing that we've done together, but like I think just that coupled with then also being parents, it's like, oh, outside of that, we still like aren't finding the time to have together. So it's still like it's just everything coming together all at once and trying to comb through and see where we can be us. And because you're right, like yeah, it's only been 9 months, but it's been 9 months. What if it had been like 9 years? Like maybe we both have this realization now, because people don't realize it until much later on, and it becomes that much harder to figure it out and reconnect or just connect. And so I'm glad that we're doing it now, because I don't feel like absent from each other. I just feel a little disconnected, and it's still new enough where it feels like it's not okay with me. Whereas like, I think, people really do get into that routine of it over months and years and years, where all of a sudden it's like, well, like now I don't even know what that looks like. Like now, like I still know what it looks like, and it's so great, and I just want it.
Right. There's like some grief, it sounds like, associated. You see, like you said, you miss him, like, and you miss probably what you and he together were. And I think that's also like probably a really complicated part of any transition. Like, you're not saying that you regret having a baby, but just acknowledging that, like bringing a third into your duo, as you said, creating a group, like just change things, and that things will be different, and they won't be like they were before. So thanks for sharing.
Of course, my vulnerable self-care share is accompanied by me playing with this clit.
Yes, go ahead, get your fidget on. But keep us. I wanna hear about your dates, your monthly dates as they come up.
I will share. Share. Okay.
Keep us posted.
How about you? How are you? Let's not jump into where we're talking about today. So I'm hoping your self-care area is a little bit different than, I don't know.
Then what? Then we're going to talk about. No, I'm not. I won't go. I won't do a very like thorough self-care check-in. I'm fine. I'm okay. I slept last night. That's awesome.
Nice.
I hadn't been sleeping very much, but the thing that I realized as I was in a meeting earlier that I don't think I've talked about with you or on the pod is that for the month of June, I decided to be alcohol free. And have I talked about this?
No.
Oh, okay. So it's June 26th, that time of recording. And, I think I've always kind of like been in this position of just wanting to be more intentional or intentional about my use of alcohol. It's something that I, with a family history of addiction, like always need to keep an eye on. And I think as I get older and like think about health differently, like really trying to figure out like where alcohol fits in has been something that's been on the forefront of my mind for the last couple of years, honestly. And then again, June came around and I don't know why, just kind of out of the blue, I was like, you know what? I think I want to like just be alcohol free for 30 days and kind of go with it. And so I've had so much fun with discovering mocktails and trying all sorts of seltzer. And I told Catherine as we were getting on, I need to bring a prop. I have with me it's Waterloo Peach Seltzer. This is one of my faves, but I've been having a lot of fun with exploring mocktail options. Cracking a seltzer like has that nice like relief that sometimes like pouring a glass of wine might or something like that. So anyway, I say all of that to say it's just been like a different way to engage in self-care that's almost like been really surprising to me. And it's also helped me think about like I have a birthday coming up. There's a business milestone coming up. We're going on vacation. So it's made me think about like what does it mean to celebrate those things? And does alcohol fit into that? If it does, how much? If it doesn't, like what does celebrating look like? And so anyway, I always like to, give myself opportunities to learn about myself. And this has been a cool thing.
So interesting. Your dry January that you're
Yes.
Are you okay? I have a lot of questions. One is, and feel free to not answer. One is, do you feel like you drink for the buzz, or you drink like more out of like oh, it's there, or like just because it's usually coupled with certain situations?
I think it's a little bit for the buzz, but also like I haven't really talked about this on the pod for a while, but like I am definitely avoidant of my feelings. I'm more of a thinker or like more of a doer than a feeler. Like, if I have a lot, in my life going on, then that is when I throw myself into work. And so like as a therapist, I can really appreciate like when my clients sit in their feelings and get vulnerable because I know how hard it is to do. And so I think there's something about like a little bit of a buzz or like feeling like a little bit of a not quite numbing, but like a little bit of a dulling. Yeah, escape or like sense of fun or again like the loss of inhibitions that come with alcohol. This is not to promote alcoholism by any means, but like there are parts of engaging in this substance use that like have been a way that I've coped for sure. And I think again, as I like evaluate my health currently and future, trying to think about like, is that still the way that I want to go? I've made this joke, which has been again, kind of like a sick joke. Like I am the best version of myself after one glass of wine because I'm relaxed. I'm more fun. I've talked about that with my therapist and she's like, but Amy, like one glass of wine doesn't magically unlock your personality. Like that's always who you are. Like maybe you just feel a little bit more free to be her. And so that's been something that I've also been wrestling with. Like, on this podcast, we've talked a lot about like stories we tell ourselves or like limits that we put on ourselves or labels that we put on ourselves. And I think that was such a big part. Like I can't, like the best version of myself is like slightly buzzed. Like that's not cool. So to answer your question, yeah, a little for the buzz, for the escape. And this is like maybe a little, a little more like, again, think all of the things that I'm saying are why I've been like, I really need to reevaluate. But for me, like I'm like with work, like so professional, quote unquote, so ethical. And so if I've had a drink or a sip of alcohol, it gives me the permission to like not check my email, not be available. And like again,
Check it
that's like
out.
yeah, the permission to check out. And so again, like I can impose those boundaries and limits on my own hypothetically. And so there's that aspect of it too, like where it gives me a reason to not work or to not be available. And again, all of these things I can do on my own, and I've just been relying on alcohol as like the reason for me not to do them.
Okay, my second question around this is if you're not drinking this peach Waterloo, what kind of like mocktails are you experimenting with? Are you making them yourself, or is this when you're going out to eat and they have like mocktail at the very bottom and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'll be that person tonight?
Yes, I've totally tried like mocktails on cocktail menus, and they're so much more prevalent now, which is fun. I'll also see like things. I saw like a really cool looking drink that had rum in it, and I just had them replace it with like club soda, and it was a wonderfully refreshing like watermelon, like fresh watermelon basil mocktail. But again, brands are just so much more prevalent. Waterloo has and I'll share them to my story so that our listeners can see. But Waterloo Sparkling Water came out with a Pinot Colada and a Mocktail Mule, and they are fantastic. So that's been fun. There's another brand called Recess that has like canned mocktails that are like quite delicious. And I don't even like the taste of alcohol. I think it's more like the ritual that comes with it. And so again, like having something to pour or something to open that feels fun is great.
I've heard about this one called Des Soirs. Have you heard of that one? I think
I've
that's how you
seen
pronounce
it. I've not tried it, but I've seen it.
You can get it like Target or Whole Foods or something, and they have Aperol Spritz. I want to try some of those. Those look good. Also, one of the influencers that I love influencers / like fitnessy people, Megan Roof from the Sculpt Society. She gets non-alcoholic wine all the time, and she just like makes it look really good. Oh, she's doing her job well, I guess. But yeah, so like there's like so many options out there. It's so cool.
Yeah. And I'm still really actively following Meg Fee, who was on our podcast about a year ago, and we can link that somewhere like in combination with this episode. But she was talking about like resources and brands, and she on her story also shares brands too that she are tried and true. So yeah, just
having a
little fun. I know. So fun. She's like 600 plus days alcohol free, which is also great.
Good for you, Meg.
Yes.
So
anyway, so that's my self-care.
Awesome. Yes, and I'm glad you separated it, because I'm sure there's going to be some self-care woven into what we're talking about today.
Yes.
Which what we're talking about today is you and your health journey.
So fun. Yeah. And as I was kind of sitting down to think about it, it really has been a journey. And so I don't think my journey is like relatively unique. And so I'm hoping that in me sharing my experience, that it's either like validating or normalizing or something for those of you who are listening.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the reasons that we're talking about it is because it's come up so much here. You've talked about your health, whether it's been with our guests or just in our self-care check-ins. Obviously, health and self-care, they go hand in hand. And so there have been so many times where you've been sick, or so many times where you've been trying to switch up your workout regimen. But then there have also been so many times where you're like feeling really good about where you're at. And you like you said today, you slept really well last night. So that's a win. So not everything has been pitfalls on this health journey. There's been lots of ups and triumphs. And so we want to talk about it all. We want to hear about the lows. We want to hear about the highs. I'm saying I want to hear about all of this, even though I know about a lot of it. So hopefully our listeners want to hear about all of this.
Yes.
Okay. Can you just start from the very beginning, Amy? Once upon a time. Tell us about when you like really started to think about your health and lean into the idea of taking care of yourself, and like what signaled that? Where does it all begin?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. And in thinking about this too, I realized how I was reminded, not even realized because I've been reminded a lot, how privileged I am to have lived in like a relatively healthy body my entire life. And so it was not something that I necessarily thought about or actively prioritized through my childhood or even younger adulthood. And while I had like little ailments there, like here and there, like digestion has always just been an uphill battle for me, but it's like never like been debilitating, you know. And while I've had like physical ailments like broken fingers or bones, like other than that, like again, I've been blessed to live in a very healthy body. That being said, though, I was always very aware of my family's health history. And so my maternal grandparents died very young. My maternal grandfather died of a heart attack when he was in his 40s. And my maternal grandmother died when she was in her 50s, also of like heart related failure. Diabetes is really prevalent in my family. On my dad's side, similarly, both of my grandparents have passed. They lived a bit longer, but also dealt with health related issues. Obesity is prevalent in my family, so there alcoholism, substance misuse, very prevalent in my family. So that's always been kind of in the background of like things to probably keep in mind. But because again, I wasn't dealing with any of them head on, or my parents were healthy, it wasn't again so much of a priority. And so for me personally, it wasn't until I had my own health crisis, so to speak, that I really started to need to pay attention to it. And it's something I've definitely talked about on the pod, not for a while, but maybe, gosh, it's got to be around 10 years ago, 9 years ago, that I was getting sick a lot. Like I was out from work, like for a handful of days to sometimes a week, almost every month, feeling so fatigued, so low energy, and just like felt like I could never fully kick whatever it was that I had. And I had, you know, just kind of gone through the motions of like feeling like crap, taking time off work, trying to rest, but feeling guilty because I was not working, and kind of pushing myself through it so I would feel well enough to get back to work. And that cycle continued for, I don't know, maybe 6 or so months. My stress was so high, but I don't even think I registered it as stress at the time. It was just like going through the motions. I also was probably, you know, drinking a lot. I was not eating well, not like taking care of myself. Again, things in retrospect that I can see now. And um and then one day I just like really felt off. And as I look at pictures from around that time, like I am unrecognizable in a lot of ways. I had gained like 30 pounds. I just looked unwell, looked like my eyes were drawn, my face was puffy, like I just did not look like myself. And I had gone to the doctor because I was dealing with just again, countless just ailments. And while I was at the doctor, I fainted, I collapsed and needed to go to the emergency room and try to figure out what was going on. And it wasn't until kind of navigating through that process that I realized that a lot of what contributed to how I was feeling was how I was living, and that I really needed to make some shifts and changes in the way that I was engaging in my own well-being in order to feel better. And yes, there were things, you know, from a neurological perspective that they discovered were going on that were impacting my health. There were some gastrointestinal things going on that needed to be resolved. were like through a colonoscopy, I'm sorry if that's TMI, that were resolved and had like such a dramatic effect overall. And so that was, again, like 8 or 9 years ago that stuff was going on. But it completely shook me. I've shared about this on podcast previous, but like I had to be out of work for 8 weeks. I like couldn't walk on my own. I couldn't recognize numbers or letters. Like I was fucked up. I just was so, having such a hard time. And again, it was, kind of a shameful period because some of this was self-induced because of like, again, the way I was just kind of like running through walls in my life, like never stopping, putting myself way last and just not engaging in habits, like healthy habits. And so after that, it scared the shit out of me. Number one. And, in going through that process, I relied a lot on more Western medicine. And so I had seen a number of doctors. No one could tell me what was wrong, but everyone wanted to prescribe me antibiotics or, anything, but like without knowing why. And I remember being in this place of like feeling like it didn't make any sense to me, but I also like felt like they know what they're doing. And I was like really struggling between like, I know my body and like, I know what the course of treatment that they're suggesting doesn't feel right, but also like they're the doctors and like they know better than me, and like really trying to figure that out and navigate that. And I'll get back to that definitely. But then I met with a functional medicine doctor, and this has really changed my life. So my functional medicine doctor took all of my charts, all of my files from all of the many different doctors I went to. And I went to a lot of different specialists, like a neurologist, a GI doc, infectious disease doctor. I went to so many different people that were trying to kind of treat these like more specific symptoms. And so he put everything out on the table, and he was like, Amy, you are one body. Like we've got to like really find a way to understand how all of these things are related and how they are working together or against one another in order to create how you're feeling now. And that really, really stuck with me. And working with him was wonderful and really helped me kind of feel more connected to my body again. And he also gave me a lot of tough love too around stress. I remember he would ask me about, ways I was taking care of myself. And I would say, I don't know, I'm just so stressed. And he would say constantly, stress is just perception, Amy. Like that is just your perception of what's going on. And I was like, damn, I did not want to hear it at the time, but he was right. And if you're a client of mine, you've heard me say that to you at one point. So it really stuck with me. And
So what did he actually want you to see? If it wasn't stress, what did he want you to look at?
I think he just wanted me to reframe it as what I was not prioritizing. I was prioritizing work over everything else. Like he was wanting to see that I was choosing the life I was living. And he was right. He was 100% right. And that's like been one of my biggest learnings. It's one of the things that I come back to, like when I notice my health is kind of falling back again. It's like, damn, Amy, you are choosing this right now. And he's right. He's in my head still. I've internalized his voice, all of these years later.
Still so harsh.
Yeah, man.
It's a harsh reality you needed to hear.
I really, and I hated it. I hated hearing it. I was defensive. I was not accepting of it then. And then I think that as I started to, because I didn't want to feel like it was my fault. I like really wasn't ready to understand that. I was so angry about what was happening. And part of the maybe relevant context here is that I had I'll say an accident at a job that I was at a few years prior, and a huge amount of the neurological stuff I was experiencing was as a result of that accident. And I never really processed through that trauma. And so when I learned that a lot of the way I was feeling was related to that event, I like wanted to funnel all of my anger toward that. And so when he's saying like, okay, yeah, that did happen. And like, you're not helping yourself. I like did not, I just like couldn't hear it then. But it was still meaningful that he continued to say it. Cause I, again, clearly heard it. Even though I wasn't totally ready to at the time.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
wow. So when you finally were ready to accept it, well, first of all, how long did it take for you to accept it that you were really playing a part in this?
I would say, so this was kind of coinciding when Revive was forming. And I think I started to feel like a big fat hypocrite, that I was like promoting a business that was about well-being and taking care of yourself, and especially the people that do this work taking care of themselves. And I was like, damn, I am really not practicing what I preach. And I like want to be authentic in everything that I do. And I feel like I can't stand by like the mission of this company and not like embody like what it is that I'm like wanting others to do. So I think that was a piece of it in like the development of Revive. So it was like maybe a year later, like, and I didn't, but I thought about when Revive like had fully launched, reaching out to him and saying like, this is here because of you, in large part. It took a while. And I think that I didn't fully like, while I say I internalized it and yes, it clicked, like clearly it hasn't, because here we are, fast forward, 6 years, and last year was one of the hardest health years of my life since then.
Well, before we even get there, like you clearly did a lot to shift your entire life around. Even if you're not at the peak wellness that you want to be at now, and last year maybe was maybe a lot of the things that you had built like fell to the wayside, or maybe I'm just making some assumptions here. We'll get into it. But what did change? Like, what did you, when you were like, okay, I need to embody what I'm really trying to create. I need to start taking care of myself. What did that start to look like? What did you put into practice?
Okay. So a lot of things, like my relationship to work is something that I like am eternally working on. But I think it was letting myself take time off, and like giving myself the permission to not check my email at 5 a.m. or at 11 o'clock at night, like to let myself, like the idea of me being a human was really hard for me to accept, and still is. Like, it's still something that I like cannot, like, have a really hard time tolerating, that I'm not a machine, that I can't just like move through things, that like I don't just have like an on and off switch. And I think like once I realized like I really need to take care of myself in order to do this job well, that really helped. And what taking care of myself meant was like not being so in it at work. And I think I did learn it also by blowing shit up, by like being overtired and being, not my best self, like with colleagues, or like just being impatient and that coming through with emails. And so I think it was through kind of like trial and error as it related to like my boundaries with work, but that was probably a really big one. Movement, of course. I know we just like went on and on for an entire episode about how much we love exercise, but like having that be a non-negotiable, it has been like life-changing. And I think not only for, again, like the physical aspect of things, but like having time that's for myself, just me, was really, really meaningful, and like making that, I guess, sacred, and finding parts of my day that felt like truly sacred and just for me. Like again, like in that episode about fitness, we talked about my morning coffee. Like my morning coffee, quiet morning coffee has been, I don't even know who I was before that. Like
Quiet morning coffee with frothed milk.
with must I've yes, elevated the game to it must include frothed milk, no matter where I am in the world. And just like, again, creating space for myself in my life, I guess, is the TLDR version of this, like letting myself take up space in my own life. And I don't think that I, really gave myself permission to do that really ever. And going through that first health crisis made me realize like my life is literally on the line if I don't do this. Which might sound drastic or dramatic, but again,
You were in the hospital. I think you can say that.
Yeah, my heart stopped. I guess I can say that. But I think it was so, in the way that we talk about self-care, like I think a lot of that, of course, comes from our personal experiences. But for me, realizing like how actually meaningful some of these micro habits are to building in a greater sense of well-being is through my own experience of that, of like, yes, I know my 20 minutes of drinking coffee quietly is not going to change my life dramatically. It definitely changes my mood dramatically. And that feels pretty life-changing to me. So
over the course of the 8 or 9 years that you've had that realization, put different health practices into play, you've had setbacks, not just last year, but was last year like, and I think maybe give our listeners a little insight into what that was in case they haven't heard. But like, would you say last year was like maybe like the biggest dip in that, or have you had other years or other moments that were like that?
Last year, which I will describe a little bit more, was definitely the biggest dip. Okay. Like I think I was kind of hanging on for a while, like where there was a dramatic decrease. And then I think I kind of plateaued for a while in terms of like my overall well-being. Long story short, last year was the biggest, like most dramatic dip since like the original incident. And really it felt like, and it was something I talked to my doctor about, it didn't feel gradual. It literally felt like a light switch moment of like me feeling kind of like myself and then all of a sudden not feeling like myself. And I remember so vividly, we were recording a podcast with our holistic dietitian. And that's like right around the time when all of this started, when I just felt like my body doesn't feel like my body anymore. My brain feels mushy. I have no energy. I feel like I can't do the things physically or mentally that I have done before. Sleep was off. Like my whole being felt off. And it felt like even things like, food that I could eat and feel good with was like not helping me feel good. And I just felt like, just really not connected to my body in the same way. And it really threw me off because I had worked so hard to create like such a intuitive relationship with my body. And so I like for a while, for that was like in October, and like through October, November, December, January, I sort of rationalized like, oh, I'm probably feeling this way because X or Y or Z. And despite having this, again, experience in the background years ago, it didn't click even then for me to say like, Amy, you're so fucking stressed. Like maybe look at that. But I didn't. I just kind of made excuses for what was going on, which was again, kind of simple to do. And then I, had the thought of like, okay, this is really affecting me like in a big way. Like it was really starting to affect my mood and mental health and all of that stuff. And so I had reached out to a functional dietitian to help support me through what was going on. And I want to note that I specifically did not want to go to my primary care doctor. I did not want to engage in a more Western medicine approach. In that span of time between, yes, I felt so betrayed. I felt so like I couldn't trust that system anymore. I felt like they didn't care about me. I felt like they weren't listening to me. It was so hard to advocate for myself. It was very stressful. To say traumatic is too hyperbolic, but like it really left such a sour taste in my mind. And I just didn't feel comfortable. When feeling so uncomfortable in my body, I felt like I can't go there right now. And so I went this functional dietitian approach and really wanted her help in helping me understand what was going on, so that we can treat that. And I think that's, again, as a practitioner, that's the way that I like to work. Like, let's look at the root and not just put a Band-Aid on what's going on at the surface. And she was definitely helpful. Caveat though, one of the things that started to happen is that like things were sort of starting to improve and then kind of plateaued. What ended up happening is that I leaned way too far into that side of things, the more like holistic approach, where I was needing to kind of change up my like dietary stuff. Like every few weeks, I was like diligently logging and tracking my food, submitting my food journals, like paying attention to every single symptom. I was cycling through supplements, trying to figure out what was going to work. It was very, very stressful. Both vacations I went on last year, not only were they not vacations for like work related stuff, but like I had an entire suitcase packed of like aloe vera juice and my supplements and like food that I could eat and figuring out food that could work within the structure that was created was like, it was so stressful. And it provided like minor relief. So it was stressful, very expensive. I had gained 10 pounds in the process of going through this. And so it was just like creating more angst. And so while I had some relief from what I initially kind of was working with her on, like it was kind of creating more stress and more problems. And I ended up discontinuing my work with her. She was lovely, like no shade on her at all, but it was just like no longer fitting well into my life. And it wasn't until I was, preparing to talk with you about this today that I realized like how all or nothing I had become in my journey, and how like my experience initially like turned me so far off that I didn't even think about leaning on it even a little bit to support me when I was like feeling like shit. And I think that's like, I feel a little, I don't know, funny about saying this again, running a business that's like, that comes from a holistic lens, but there has to be room for both. And I think that part of like what the wellness industry is selling right now is that you have to lean all the way in to that side of things in order to like be considered well. And I totally bought into that. And while that may work for some people, like that definitely did not work for me. And as I'm, now, I don't know, maybe six months into like, not 6 months, maybe like 4 months into like feeling the most like myself I have in quite a while. Like it is the combination of the two. And I think that has been really important for me to remember.
So, oh my gosh. Okay. So you, okay.
I just threw a lot at you.
No. Okay. So first go around, it was 100% Western.
Mm-hmm.
Second go around, even though your heart didn't stop, you didn't end up in the hospital, still fell off this cliff and you weren't Amy and you went totally natural, and that didn't work. And now the combination, what does the combination look like? Like, what did you end up going to see was it your primary care doctor to go, like, did you go see them? Did you go see some sort of other MD specialist? Like, where'd you go? What'd you do?
Yeah. So I went to see my primary care doctor, who again had a little bit of a salty relationship with, but kind of felt like I need help. And you're my doctor. You know me. He works with my whole family. You know us all. You know my family history. Help me out. And he was wonderfully supportive in running labs, even things that he was like, why do you want to do this? Like it allowed me to, with my previous experience, gave me the courage to advocate for certain labs to be run, blood work to be done. I was much more involved with asking questions, in like challenging certain things that he said, just given my past experience and the work that I had done with this functional dietitian. And so, yes, working with my MD, and using those labs, in conjunction with the functional dietitian. So like having them work together, was very, very meaningful. So the other part of wellness culture that, again, I like really bought into, because again, I'm still a perfectionist and I still want to do things well, was as it relates to how we should be viewing our body and how we should be moving with our body. And I was really struggling with the fact that I had gained weight and I did not feel good in my body physically, like in what my and how it felt to sit in my clothes and how it felt to move my body, but also how it looked. And I was having such a sense of like, I'm supposed to love my body no matter what. I'm supposed to, like just accept myself for where I am. And after a while, I felt like, fuck this. I do not accept this. I do not accept feeling like shit. I do not accept, like being in this body that does not feel good to be in, that I know can feel better, that I know can move differently, that I know can look better. Fuck this. And so I, just prioritized getting my weight back to where it felt comfortable for me to live the life that I want to live, which is very active. And so focusing on weight loss and working with a nutritionist to help me with that, which may be taboo, but guess what? This is my journey. And the other thing that I felt a lot of shame about, again, as influenced by wellness culture, was engaging in more HIIT style workouts, because there is a lot of emphasis on low impact movement right now, which is so important. And while I, again, value that, I think that's important, I just don't enjoy it as much. And so I let myself do the movement that felt good to me. And that happens to be OrangeTheory. And that happens to work really well for me in lots of ways. And so I guess all of this to say, I really just tried to think about where I think the bridge from more Eastern medicine, that bridged with the more Western medicine, the idea of we are our own experts in our body. We know ourselves really well. I just had to let go of the noise and let go of the idea that I was doing something right or wrong, or that I would offend somebody if I asked a question or said no to something. And I just had to do what I knew would feel right for me. And as I said, fuck it. I know that my answer might piss people off, but I feel better, and that's what matters.
Good for you. Good for you. And I'm glad you said it the way that you did, because this podcast is about your experience, and your experience is, although what you're saying might inspire people, we're not telling people to do exactly what you're doing. You're not telling people that this is what works for you. And that's amazing that that works for you. And I'm so glad you found this, like, I don't want to say perfect, but like this really amazing marriage between all of the things that you've learned over the course of these 8 or 9 years. And it seems like you're on this path to continuing to feel like you and making that more of a constant than maybe it ever has been. So kudos to you. Do you? Fuck it.
Fuck it. Yeah. You know, and I think, you know, a lot of times, like, we need to go through things, like we need to go through crises, or we need to go through, to say we need to go through crises is probably not correct, but like we need to go through things in order to like learn the lesson that we really need to learn. And I think that was a big one for me. And so like, while I'm still like a food first, take a food first approach to managing my health and well-being, I'm not going to suffer if I if I really need relief and like I'll take a Tylenol. Like I'm sorry, I'm gonna. And again, I'm gonna do my best to take care of myself from like a well-being, like a wellness well-being lens, in a way that works for me. And that might not work for you or for anyone listening, but like, it doesn't matter. And I think that the freedom to say that, to let myself say that, has been like I've really come away with that, because I think I like never really felt like I, again, gave myself the permission to show up in my own life and to advocate for myself and to give myself what I wanted. And it wasn't until I had too many experiences where I felt like so misheard or not listened to, that, I don't know, I think it crystallized for me. And I'm still learning. Like I said, I'm still thinking about my relationship with alcohol. I'm always thinking about my relationship with movement, my relationship to food, like my relationship with my body. Like it's all ever changing. And I think like I'm open to that, like that things will continue to shift and change, especially as I age. And that's cool. That's okay. And I think having a little bit more trust in myself that I can figure it out. And if I can't, I can ask for help. Like that is meaningful to me.
That seems like the biggest thing here is that like you not only started to trust yourself, but like in learning that you played such a huge role in why things went wrong in the first place, you're like harnessing that into every aspect of your health and every moment of I guess not every moment, you know, we can't be so mindful every single second, but like in every day, every month, every year, you're like reassessing. And like the beginning of this month when you were like, let me try a dry month, like that is you getting attuned to you and thinking about what you need and how you can play a part in how things change, and not just wanting things to just happen for you. And I think like that's pretty incredible and so far from what like we're all naturally kind of like open to doing. Like, and I guess even this connects back to my self-care. Like nothing really is natural the way that we want them to. If we want them to be a certain way, you really do have to work at it in every area of your life. And this is a wonderful example of that. And I'm so glad you shared all this.
Yeah. I mean, no one's coming to save us. Like we're it. Like we're all we've got. Like we have to, again, like be the hero of our story. Like, and I think that again was such a thing that I was so reliant on someone. Just tell me what's wrong. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this. And no one knew the answer but me. And no one could create the solution but me. And I think once I took myself out of being a victim and like started feeling like, no, it's only my risk. I'm the only one who's going to really care about changing this. Like I've got to change it. Like it is literally in my hands. It just like opened opened my mind.
So I think that you've really already said that you want to continue to improve and keep going on this path. It's not perfect. It never will be perfect. But where do you think you want to round it out? Or like, how do you want to continue going with it to make it that much better?
Okay, two things. One is sleep. Like sleep is like my Everest, it feels. And so I still have to like figure that out for myself. So that's like a short-term goal. But as I think more about what I want to lean into in terms of my health and well-being, it's that I want to be able to live my life most fully and most presently without the noise or the stress of my health getting in the way. Like I don't want another vacation to be robbed because of the way that I feel about myself or the way my body feels. I want to be able to fully engage in every part of my life without feeling like shit. And maybe that is just such a lofty goal, but I feel like I just don't want to accept feeling like shit. Like I just don't want to. And so I don't know if that truly answers your question, but like when I think about like the goal as I understand where I am with my health right now, it's like I feel like too much of my life has been spent trying to manage through the way that I feel in my body or my body feels. And I want to be well enough that and have strong enough habits as well that like I don't need to think about it, that I like continue to build a more intuitive sense of who I am, what I need, and give myself the permission to give it to me.
That's cool. I like that. So you're well aware that you need to be paying attention to it, but you want to be able to just pay attention to all of the practices so that the other part just really comes along with it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I will be damned if in 7 years I have another time where I'm sitting here talking to you and saying, it was just a light switch that just happened. Like I need to commit to just staying more aware of myself and more attentive to my needs. To your point.
Great. Well, again, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's nice to hear it all in one kind of like chronological thing, rather than like the bits and pieces that I get and that I think our listeners get from our self-care check-ins and from our episodes. I think it was really nice anyways for me to hear the whole saga.
Yeah. Thanks.
So,
I mean, it is a saga, and I like, I'm in some ways, like as I'm sitting here thinking about the last like few minutes of what we've been talking about, I feel like I have a certain attitude around it, or like certain, I don't know, passion perhaps, but I feel like talking about this and thinking about this has kind of lit a fire in me that I think I needed to be reminded of as well. So I appreciate having the space to talk about it. And again, we all have our own experiences like navigating through like health and wellness, and that changes over time. And that's why I love how we've like been thinking about this podcast and giving people a platform to talk about their experiences, because it's not always roses and sunshine. And there are ways that we can learn how to help ourselves and live well through like learning from others' experiences too. So I'm hopeful that someone, got something from this. But that's not, while yes, of course we're doing a podcast and I want people to like get something from it. Like in another sense, like I know that I got something meaningful from my journey, and that also has to be enough for me too. Okay. Well, again, thank you for giving me the space. Thank you to our listeners for following along with us. If you are not following along with us on YouTube, go over there and check out full episodes of Wishing You Well on our YouTube channel, Wishing You Well by Revive Center for Wellness. You can find everything there. You can also follow our other podcast, Reactivity TV, over on YouTube. And that's where my husband Chris and I talk about reality TV, most specifically The Bachelorette, which will be airing July 8th-ish. You can follow along with Wishing You Well at Wishing You Well Pod on Instagram. You can follow Catherine at Catherine Van Eyck, me at Amy Albero LCSW, and you can follow our parent company, Revive Center for Wellness, at revivecfw.com. Send us emails to wishingyouwell at revivecfw.com for feedback, suggestions, guest ideas. We love hearing from you. And don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, share this episode with a friend if you think it could resonate with them. Okay, until next time, we are wishing you well. Bye.